Yes, it's very good. I recommend on going in blind to this. That's what I did, and holy shit, this game was peak. But anyway, this is a game I have been anticipating for about 5 years or so, and this was my most anticipated game of the year. I'm excited for Wolverine and GTA 6, but like I said, I've been waiting a while for this game, and let's be honest, is GTA 6 even coming out this year? I don't believe it is. I think that's some woke mind virus type shit. I think that game's a social experiment to see how long people will actually believe something's real. And I gotta say, this game met my expectations, and then some. I knew Leon and Raccoon City was in this, so I didn't think much would surprise me in this game. But there were genuine times my jaw hit the fucking floor, and that rarely happens to me while playing video games. So as many of you know, Resident Evil 7 is my favourite Resident Evil out of all the ones I've played. And I said in that video I wanted the survival horror aspect to come back because in Resident Evil 8 they kind of moved away from it, and they did. And they did it perfectly. Ashley's gameplay is pretty much RE7's, but even more horrifying because not only do you have less weapons, but there are even scarier enemies. But then you have Leon's gameplay, and let me tell you, that shit is peak. I think RE4's gameplay was great, but to me it eventually got quite a bit boring. I think that game just kind of had too much and there was a bunch of pacing issues and it just wasn't perfect to me. But in Requiem, it never got stale. It feels like Leon's gameplay has been perfectly tuned, and I think the mix between survival and action horror is done perfectly. When I realised this was how the game was going to play, I was pretty skeptical. But in retrospective, no, it's perfect. There are times when Leon would get like a 5-minute section and then Grace would get like a fucking hour-long one and then vice versa, but for the majority of the game, I think it works very well. And I gotta get back to Leon's combat because to me, it is some of the best I've ever experienced in any game, and I think it's helped by the hatchet. I love parrying in video games, and I think not only allowing people to parry, but using an actually effective melee weapon, fuck you Resident Evil 4 knife, makes for such a fun experience. Parrying an enemy and then immediately following up with a shotgun blast is satisfying as hell. And then there's the gunplay, which once again is some of the best I've ever seen. Every gun just feels so impactful. Every time you shoot someone, you can really feel it. Not just in the recoil or the controller vibrations, but in how the zombies react. Some of them will just almost blow up into smithereens, and it's just incredible. I hope I don't sound crazy when I say that, but you know, most RE enemies, they're pretty bullet spongy, and it's nice to see enemies actually take some like noticeable damage. There are so many times in this game where you've got to complete a random objective that would normally bog down the game's pacing, but it's still so fun because of all the action set pieces. Like a cool mortar strike section where I fucking popped off with these snipes. Or the skyscraper glass section, where a lot more of the combat is getting a bunch of zombies into like a gang and into little groups and shit, and then dropping them to the floor below. And the team clearly knew this because there isn't a merchant in this game to sell you guns, but instead in this game, there's a kill counter that gives you money for every kill you get, and it actually rewards you for playing more aggressive and just having fun. And it kind of means there's never a dull moment with Leon because everything you do gets rewarded. Speaking of the game's pacing, I think it has some of the best pacing out of almost any Resident Evil game. Most RE games start to fall off near the end, like 7, it's like peak up until like the fucking boat section, and then it just gets really fucking boring. But in 9, it just keeps going and going and never gets boring. And how could I talk about this game without mentioning the boss fights? There's actually not too many in the first half of the game because you're mostly like playing as Grace, but when you enter Raccoon City with Leon, they just start throwing them at you. You fight massive plants, a new version of Nemesis, well-trained super soldiers, and even Mr. X. And I love how much you can see Leon's grown from RE2 because Mr. X isn't just recycled. He's not following you for the whole game again. You just kill him in that boss fight and that's it. It really goes to show how much Leon has grown as a character. Every boss fight is just cool as hell in this game and I enjoyed fighting all of them. But this is a horror game after all. So how is the horror itself? Well guys, I gotta tell you. This game is RE7 on fucking steroids. Everywhere in this game is fucking disgusting. And just like in that game, it can make a simple room into the stuff of nightmares. But I think it's definitely helped with the enemy variety. Something I hate about 7 is the enemies. They are really fucking boring. But this game does not have that problem at all. Almost every enemy feels unique. You got Eldritch Demon Ladies, Fat-Ass Babies, Swedish Chef on Meth, and many, many more. This game really does feel like the RE team looked back at the whole series, a bit like how the Mario and Zelda teams did for Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, and realised what everyone loved about them and put it into one game. Unlike Leon's sections where you're just gunning down enemies, we're back to only shooting enemies to get them to move away. And again, unlike Leon who has like 10 guns by the end of the game, Grace will only have about 2 or 3. And I really do like this. Once again, it helps you be able to tell the difference in gameplay between the protagonists and makes the mix of them kind of mean something. And I think the horror is very much helped by the graphics this game has. Resident Evil games have always looked good, but I gotta say, this may be the best looking game I've ever played. There's so many times when the game just looks like fucking real life, and I'm not even just saying that. I think if you showed like this footage to someone, they'd be like, yeah, that's just real life. And it's not even just the cutscenes, the gameplay as well has the amazing graphics that make the blend between them work very well. And again, these graphics flowed extremely well. I'm playing this on a base model PS5, and I rarely, if ever, had a frame rate drop. And to be honest, this game is just like very well polished. There were barely any bugs or glitches really, with me only encountering like 1 or 2 maybe in my 10-hour runtime. But despite all that scary shit, Requiem's not afraid to get ridiculous. Like there's this one section where you have like a motorcycle chase on a collapsing highway where you drive up buildings and shit, and at first I thought it was going to be pretty stupid, but then I realised, no, it's cool as fuck. Alright, I'm going to get into some story spoilers here, so if you ignored the first spoiler warning, I'm giving you another one, so skip to this timestamp if you don't want to get spoiled or no. Do it! This game is really good. Now obviously Grace is the standout, being a brand new character to the series, and I gotta say, I hope she appears more. At first I thought she was going to get on my nerves because she's the nervous character, and I often think writers fail at writing characters with anxiety. But Grace is understandably a bit nervous to go out to the place her mum died, and her actress is actually pretty good at playing the scared character without it getting too annoying. But I do like how she clearly gets braver during the game, not screaming when she sees a monster she's already seen, and eventually just gets used to what's going on around her. And then there's Leon, and it's fucking Leon, everyone loves Leon. But I like how he clearly has some guilt over Raccoon City and still wants to do some good and help people. And I think this Leon may be my favourite version we've ever seen of him. Now as for the story itself, you're tasked with going to the Brentwood Hotel as there's been another murder, but this is where Grace is discovered by Victor, and he says she must be used for a greater purpose. And this purpose is unlocking Elpis and launching a huge bioweapon. But turns out this whole time, Elpis was not a bioweapon, but instead was actually a cure to all bioweapons and making them useless. And the launcher of this was Spencer, one of the co-founders of Umbrella. At the end of his life, he kind of wanted to fix what he had broken, and the one person who could launch this was Grace. And that's a big theme of this game. Guilt. Fucking everyone feels some sort of guilt in this game. Grace over the death of her mum, Leon for Raccoon City, and Spencer for, well, this whole fucking series. But something I have to talk about is that we may be seeing the ending come to the Resident Evil series soon. Or at least the main line. With Spencer curing all bioweapons, what more can they really do? And I kind of do hope with RE10 or REX or whatever the fuck they decide to call it, this series does kind of end, because I think it's what the series needs. I love this series as much as the next guy, but I'd love to know how it ends. I'd love to see spin-offs and stuff where we get more stories that are a bit like Resident Evil 7, where random people just stumble across an infection, but for the main line, I'd like to see an end. But yeah, Resident Evil Requiem is one of the best games in the franchise, and I may even put it in my top 10 or top games of all time. It's genuinely close to a masterpiece. Even one of my friends who hasn't even played the game, who just watched someone else play it, said it's really close to being a masterpiece. So with that, I'm going to give Resident Evil 9 Requiem a 10 out of 10.